So you've got a great image that you want to use as the background for your battlefield. So you're going to drag that out of the library onto the page, and now you need to resize it, center it, move it to the map layer, and possibly resize the page so that everything fits properly and looks right. Well, in this video, I'm going to show you how to write a script that will do all of those actions for you so you can quickly go from this to this. All right, let's see how that works. So I've got two tabs open right now, one for my game and one for my game's main settings page here. So I'm going to go into the settings and I'm going to go to API scripts. And then we're going to say we're going to create a new script. And I'm going to call this script mapsizer.js. Okay, and let's make this a little bit bigger too so that it's easier to read the code. So if you watch some of my other videos, you'll know that Roll20 is listening for things to happen in the background. So it's listening for commands to be typed into chat. It's listening for the page to change, all sorts of events like that. So what we want to do is when our specific command, mapsizer, gets typed into the chat box, we want to resize the map and do all those other things that I talked about a minute ago. So for that, what we're going to say is on chat::message. So when a message gets typed into the chat, then we're going to take the message and we're going to run it through a function. That's what this function MSG is all about. And the function itself is going to be whatever operations we put inside these curly braces that I've just typed. And don't forget to put a semicolon at the end of your line too. Okay, so we're going to be putting some stuff in between these curly braces. I'm just going to press enter a few times to give myself some space. And what we're going to say is if that message that was typed in is an API command and it is our mapsizer command, then we want to do stuff. So we're going to say if msg type equals API. And API here really just means that the message started with an exclamation point. So it started with an exclamation point, and that's what the two ampersands mean is and that the message has mapsizer in it. So what we're going to say here is message.content index of mapsizer equals 0. So assuming it starts with an exclamation point and the message text starts with exclamation point mapsizer. That's what this index of equals 0 means. That's saying this is the first thing in the message content. So if we come in here, look at our example here, mapsizer is the first piece of text in the command that was typed, so the mapsizer command would run. But if I had done this, then mapsizer is no longer the first thing in the string, and so it will not run our function. So assuming that it is the first thing in the text box, then I'm going to open the curly brace here, and we're going to do whatever's in between these curly braces. All right, now you saw on the original command, if I come back here, I had a couple of values that I was passing in. This was the width of the map, and this is the height of the map. So I want our script to be able to take the width and height and substitute them in the appropriate places. So we need to break this whole string down into its parts so that we can get just the width and just the height. So here's how we do that. I'm going to create a variable here called var args equals msg content dot split, and inside the split we're going to have open quote, well, open double quote, a space, and then a closed double quote. So it's going to look like this. Okay, so I've brought up a notepad window here to help me illustrate. So here's our original command, and this is all one string. You can think of it as like this under the hood. Okay, it's all one string. This message content split is taking that string and splitting it into pieces wherever it finds a space. So we have a space after the word mapsizer, and we have a space after the width. So what args is going to turn into is an array containing 3 pieces. It's going to have mapsizer, and then it's going to have the width, and then it's going to have the height. So we now have an array that contains all of those 3 elements. So within the array, this is our width, this is our height, and we can now access these little pieces individually. So to do that, I'm going to create another variable here called map width. I'm going to set that equal to args1. Now, args1 means give me item number 1 in the args array. And JavaScript is 0 based. So the first item in the array is actually item number 0. And then this is item number 1, this is item number 2, and so on. So just remember that JavaScript is 0 based, which means that our map height is going to be args2. Okay, so we've isolated our width and our height. But the thing to know about that is this is text. It's not a mathematical number that we can do things with. So we need to convert this value into a number so that we'll be able to set the dimensions of the map properly. And that's really easy to do in JavaScript. What we're going to do is just call this number function, wrap this around our args1, and we'll do the same thing for args2. And now when this runs, it will take that text and it will convert it into a numerical value, and that will allow us to set the dimensions of the map properly. Okay, now when you saw me run the command at the beginning of the video, you saw that I dragged my image from the library onto the page, and I had the image selected when I ran the command. So what we're going to do is take that selected image and set its width and height to these values here. But the first thing we need to do is get a reference to the selected image. So the way we're going to do that is by saying var selected equals msg.selected. And this basically says get whatever object was selected at the time that this command was typed into the chat window. So we're going to get that. Now, the selected variable here is also going to be an array, because you can have multiple items selected at a time. What we're going to say here is var map equals get object graphic, comma selected 0 dot underscore ID. Okay, so what's going on here? Well, we're getting a reference to a graphic, and graphics can be tokens or maps. In this example, we're doing a map. And the graphic that we're getting a reference to is the selected 0 item. So in our selected variable, remember that's an array. The first item in that array would be the item that we selected. So we're getting a reference to that item, and we're grabbing its ID. So we're getting the ID of that particular object, right? So we're getting the ID of the map. That's how we're getting the reference to it. So now what we want to do is set the map's dimensions, set its width and its height to the values that we typed in here. So for that, what we're going to do is say map.set, open parenthesis, open curly brace. We'll put a semicolon at the end there, and then we'll move back in between the two curly braces and give ourselves some space. And we're going to say width colon map width, height colon map height. So we're taking those two values and we are setting them to the width and the height for our map. So let's save this and try it out just to see how this is looking so far. So I've just come back into my game and I pressed Control Z a whole bunch of times to get my map back to its original thumbnail size here. And so now with that selected, I'm going to type in our command again. Here we go. And you can see the map has been resized. It's got the dimensions, and if we look at the set dimensions command here, we can see that it has been set to 5950 by 3780. And that's great. But you'll notice now the page is not big enough to display the whole map. So what we need to do next is change the page's dimensions so that they're big enough to accommodate our map. So let's see how to do that. So I'm going to come back into my script, and what I need to do first is get a reference to my page. So I'm going to say var page equals get object page. And page's ID that we're getting a reference to will be map get page ID. So we're getting a reference to the page that the map is living on. And then from there, what we're going to say is page.set, open paren, open curly brace, put a semicolon there, back between the braces, and we're going to say width, map width. But here's the thing about the width and height of a page object. If we go into the Roll20 documentation, you'll see that the width and the height are width and height in units, not in pixels. So if you look at your game's page settings, right, you find your page wherever you happen to be, you'll see you've got these units specified here. So it's 25 times 70 equals 1715 pixels wide, 25 times 70 equals 1750 pixels high. So what we need to do is take the pixel values and divide them by 70 in order to get the width and the height properties. Unfortunately, we can't just set the width and the height in pixels via the API. We have to set them via these units. So what we're going to do is go back into our script, and it's going to be map width divided by 70, and height is map height divided by 70. Okay, so let's save that. And again, I've Control-Z'd a whole bunch of times here to get back to the little Trisket icon here. Let's go ahead, let's run this again. And hey, check it out. Now the map has been resized and the page has been resized as well. So the page is now big enough to accommodate the map. So we'll just scoot that over, and there we go. Now we have a page big enough to hold our map. And this thing is so huge that I almost can't scale out far enough to see it. But you can see here the page is now the right size, and if we look at the page's settings, you'll see that they've been set to the right value. So we did the math here to set it to 85 units by 54 units, and that happens to equate to 5950 by 3780. So that's great. So now we've got the page set right. But as you just saw, I had to move the map around to get it to line up correctly. I want the script to do that for me automatically. So let's see how to do that. So to adjust where the map appears on the screen, we're going to set two more properties on the map itself. We're going to set the map's top property, and we're also going to set the map's left property. And these control where the map will live kind of on the X and Y axis. But to look at the documentation here, you'll see that the left and top properties are the number of pixels from the left edge of the map to the center of the graphic. So that means we're looking at from this edge to the middle of the map. That's what the left property is going to be. So we're basically need to take the width of the map and divide it by 2 in order to get that. So we're just going to say top will be map height divided by 2, and left will be the map width divided by 2. So let's save that. And I'm not going to Control-Z this time. I'm just going to highlight the map here, and I'm just going to run the command again. It'll do the resizing, which won't change anything, but it should center the map for us. So let's see. And there you go. You saw it. Just moved it almost by magic up into the corner. So now the map is sized properly and it is located correctly. So we've got the map being centered, and that's great. But there's still one last thing we need to do. You'll notice our map is still on the token layer, and we need to move it to the map layer. So one last tweak to make. We're going to set one more property in here called layer, and that's going to be set to map. Save that, and now we're going to put it all together, and we're going to run this one more time. All right, so here we are. I've actually just created a brand new page from scratch. It has all the default settings. I've dropped my image on here. Let's select it. We'll go in, we'll put in the map sizer command, and wham, there we go. The image was resized to the correct dimensions. It was centered. It had the page resized as well, and you can see that the item is now on the map layer. So that's fantastic. We've got all that taken. But now that we've gotten that done, we need to build in some error checking just in case things go wrong. And the first thing that we need to do is what happens if somebody forgets to select an item. Like if I come in here and I have my map selected, I can run the resize command. But if I forget to select something and I try to run map sizer, you're going to see we get an angry red error here in the API output saying we cannot read property 0 of undefined. So what that essentially means is here, when we were getting a reference to the selected item, there was nothing selected, therefore there was no selected array, which means that we weren't able to get the first item of that array because there was nothing selected in the first place. So what we need to do is build in some error checking right here after we get var selected. We're going to say if selected equals undefined. So what we're saying here is if selected is identical to undefined, then we're going to notify the user. We want to tell them to select an item. So we'll say send chat, and we're saying the chat's going to come from the API, and it's going to say please select a graphic. And then we're going to return. And what returning does is it jumps out of this function. So we will exit gracefully and not try to do these other actions starting on line 11. We're just going to jump out and stop, and then the scary red error won't show up in the API. So I will save that. And now let's test that out. We'll jump back in here. All right, so I am not selecting anything right now. I'm going to try running this again. And you see we get a message from the API saying, please select a graphic. The other scenario we want to check for is what happens if somebody types in a bad value into the command here. Like let's say instead of typing 3780, they type in 378 and the letter O. You know, I mean, those two keys are very close to one another on the keyboard. It's an easy mistake to make. So what we want to do is check to make sure that the values for the width and height are actually numbers. So let's try running this. Okay, and if we look in the API, we see we get the error saying that first argument contains not a number in property height. So you remember earlier we came in here and we converted the width and the height into numbers here. But let's talk real quick about what's happening with that conversion. So I brought up my trusty notepad window here, and what's happening behind the scenes is we go map width equals number and then that text string that was passed in. So converting the string 5950 into a number, well, that's going to give us the number 5950. If we try to convert this string 385 and the letter O into a number, well, that's going to give us not a number. And this is a special JavaScript constant that says, okay, this thing is not a number. That itself does not trigger any failures. It just says this is not a number. And even when we come down here and we do math against that, if we take map height, which is not a number, and divide that by 70, that's going to give us not a number. So again, no failures have actually taken place yet. Where the failure happens is here. When we try to set the height to not a number, the script isn't going to like that. It's going to say you can't set the height to not a number. That's what is the line that's actually causing the failure. So what we want to do is check to make sure that width and height are both numbers. And if they are not numbers, we want to notify the user and, again, recover gracefully. So for that, what we're going to say here is if, and the way you check to see if something is not a number is with this special function called isNaN, so is not a number, and then you pass in whatever you want to check to see if it is not a number. So we're going to pass in map width to start with. So if map width is not a number, or, and or is two pipes in JavaScript, isNaN map height. So if the map width is not a number or the map height is not a number, then we want to recover gracefully. We're going to notify the user. We're going to say send chat API, and we'll say please enter a valid number for width and height. And then we will return, just like we did before. So now, if we try to pass in an invalid value here, something that isn't a number, then the script will recover gracefully. So let's try that out. All right, so here we go. I'm putting in the invalid command here. And now we get a message saying, please enter a valid number for width and height. So now the script is going to recover gracefully from that scenario. And the great thing about this is this will catch one other error for us too. So if we tried to resize the map, but we leave off a property, like we don't provide the height, I only send in one number. If I try to do this, we get that message again saying, please enter a valid number for width and height. So this will check to see that all of our expected values are present too. All right, so just a few things to clean this up a little bit. For starters, I'm going to remove all this extra white space that I have. Just delete all that. There we go. And then what I'm going to do is select everything here. And I'm going to press Tab to indent it. And then we're going to put in one more line up at the top here. And what we're going to say is on ready. I'm going to say function, open parenthesis, close parenthesis. I'm going to delete this paren right here and put in an open curly brace. And then I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom. I'm going to put another closing curly brace, closing paren, and a semicolon. And basically what this is saying is we're not going to try to run our map sizer function until the campaign is fully loaded. That's what this onReady command does. So this is saying wait until the campaign is fully loaded before you try to accept any commands like map sizer. So if we tried to resize something while the campaign was still in the loading process, it may cause issues. So this is just avoiding that altogether for us. At this point, we'll click save, and now we're good to go. So there you have it. We have a script now that will take an image, resize it to specified dimensions, resize the page to be the same size as that image, put the image on the map layer, and center it properly. So pretty cool stuff. I also want to give a quick shout out to Jesper Siren, who is the amazing artist who did this map. He's got a Patreon out there. I subscribe to his Patreon. I definitely recommend you do too if you're running Dungeon of the Mad Mage or Descent into Avernus, because the maps that come with those modules are very lackluster, and his maps are absolutely amazing. The detail is wonderful. It really captures the essence of the environment. So definitely check him out. I'll put a link down to his Patreon in the description. But in the meantime, I just want to say thank you all for your time and attention. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please give it a like and consider subscribing. Thanks a lot, and have a great day.